One of the biggest things that you can do in your business is to start selling strategy. I talk about getting paid for thinking. You can see a whole bunch of videos. Check out the description below and you'll be able to see several videos that'll teach you how to get paid for your thinking, how to get paid for strategy. But the one thing that's missing, because I've been getting some questions, and that is, well, what is strategy? What is the thing that I'm actually selling? What am I actually doing? How do I package my thinking so that a prospect will want to buy it? Well, that is what we're going to talk about next. Selling strategy is crazy important to the success of any agency. If all you're selling is your labor, you're going to get commoditized quickly if you're not already commoditized. I've worked with a lot of agencies now that they were no different than all their competitors the day they started. So what we need to do is make sure that you stand out, and the best way, and really the only way that can't be copied by your competitors, is your strategic thinking. So I'm going to show you how to package strategy. Strategy comes in three parts: vision, diagnosis, and then planning. When a prospect asks you during your sales call, well, what is strategy? Why should I pay for that? And this is where you can use the analogy of the doctor. If you go in to see a doctor and that doctor says, here, take these pills, and all they did was ask you one or two questions, and it was mostly around what you told them was wrong with you, and then they said, okay, here, take this prescription, and off you go. You would not trust that doctor. You know better. That doctor actually has to do some diagnostic work to find out what's actually wrong with you. So you come in and you say, well, these are my symptoms, and I think this is wrong with me. Certain things you might know exactly what's wrong with you. I broke my arm. And then the doctor can go, okay, let's get x-rays. Even still, they don't just go, hey, let's put a cast on that. They still want to do diagnosis, because if there's something really wrong with that broken bone, well, then they may need to do surgery to make sure it heals correctly. So even when a patient comes in knowing what's wrong with themselves, the doctor still goes into diagnosis to find out if this is the only problem, or if there's a more complex problem hiding underneath this one. So if they just said, okay, we'll just take your word for it, patient, and send you in and do something for you, there's a good chance that something's going to go wrong. And that's how most agencies are operating. The client comes and says, I want a new website. And so the agency says, okay, we'll build you a website. They didn't do any diagnosis. They didn't find out, well, what's the traffic issues? What's the conversion issues? What kind of marketing are you doing? They didn't go into any of the diagnosis, and they go immediately to just prescribing what the patient has asked for. That is malpractice in the medical world. It should be malpractice in the agency world too. Use that analogy of the doctor to get them to understand that what's going on in their business is more complicated than their self-diagnosis. And for you to do the best job possible, you've got to come in and help them build the strategy of what you're going to do in the future. And if they choose not to use you to do the actual labor, then they can take the strategy and bring it over to a different agency or a different service and have them implement it, because they will have a roadmap at the end of this where they will know what needs to be done in their business to be successful. I like working on vision first when doing strategy. I want to know, well, where do you want to go? What is your aspiration? I want to see how the leadership works. I want to know how the team sees this project. I want to go into the objectives and the goals, and I want to really understand, is this company, are the people in this company committed to achieving these objectives and goals? Because if they're not, if they're just nice to haves, this project's probably not going to go all that smoothly when we're working on it, especially if it's something that's ongoing, like a recurring service. if they're not really committed to it, then eventually they're just going to be dissatisfied no matter what you do. You could be getting them great results and they'll still be dissatisfied. The reason I like working on vision first is because this goes into the why. Why are we even doing this in the first place? And if we're going to do this, are we going to do it well? Are we going to be committed? And that's the main reason I like to do it first, is to just kind of get a feel for how this company is going to work. How are they going to work with us as the client-agency relationship? If we don't have a good working relationship, and we can see that they're not truly committed, or if they really are committed, like, we can kind of gauge how this future engagement is going to happen. And we could either stay in this or go, this doesn't look like it's going to work out. Here's your money back, and have a great day. That might be the thing that comes out of working on that vision first. And that takes us into diagnosis. We now need to go into all the issues of the company. We don't want to just ask questions about, why do you want a website? What's your website going to do? Or what's already working on your website? We don't want to have those generic questions. Like, those are the granular questions that come later. Quality questions in diagnosis come down to, what kind of results have you gotten before? What have you done? What did you get? How was it done? Go into similar campaigns that they've done in the past to truly understand the way they work and the way they've worked with other agencies, or if they've ever used other agencies. This way you can get an idea of why some of the things worked and why they didn't work. And a lot of times things could have been optimized, that if there would have been a better relationship, which comes when you do the strategy, that the problems would never have existed, or they would have gotten far greater results had there been a better relationship. Most of the quality questions that you can ask during diagnosis are really about why, not how. Most of us instinctively go, how did you do it? Or how would you do it? Or those things don't really tie us back to the vision. So we want to ask a lot of why questions. Be kind of like that, a 5-year-old, really annoying with why, why, why. And every time they answer with something, you ask, why? Why that? Why do you want this? Why don't you want that? Those why questions are going to give you a broader understanding of what's actually going on. And then you can get into analytics and data, because then you can quantify what's actually going on in the business, not how people feel about what's going on. Because a lot of people believe they're doing a lot better or a lot worse than they really are. When you get into the data, you really get to see exactly how things are. Then you can get into brand message and positioning, which leads into market research, the customer persona and customer journey. You get into those areas to see, are they even targeting the right people? Or is there another market that we could step into with what they're already doing and get far greater results? Or just magnify the results that they're already getting? And then finally, we get into planning. And here's the thing about planning. It's what most of you do for free in your proposal. You work out a whole plan as to what you're going to do. Granted, you didn't do any diagnosis like a good doctor should. You just said, this is what we're going to do. We don't even know what your vision is. We're just going to say, this is what we're going to do. And you do all this planning for free. You hand over this proposal. A lot of times you even just email it over. You don't walk your prospect through the proposal. You just email it over and wonder why they never get back to you. When you're doing planning as part of strategy, you're getting paid to develop scope, timeline, estimated resources, including your estimated fees and any additional costs that the client is going to have to pay. Those can all be scoped out inside of the planning phase. And then you expand that timeline into an actual calendar. Here is what we would do. If you're into Gantt charts, you can make a Gantt chart as part of this. And then you take all 3 of these phases and you package them up into a report. and give your summary, your findings. That gives the client the priorities of what to work on first, what to work on next, and so forth, and what each of those things are going to cost. So you can break down this entire project into several phases, and they can have estimated fees for each of those phases. Now let me wrap up with delivery. Well, how are you actually going to do this strategy? If you can, do strategy in person. Fly out to their location, work in their office. If you have to, rent a space. Get all the stakeholders in one place so everybody's focused on this session. That way they aren't checking their phone, they're not being interrupted by other meetings. They have their calendar cleared to truly focus on what's going on in their business and working with you. This is going to give you great rapport with your client because you're going to work together for maybe a day, 2 days, or even splitting it into half days. Do 2 half days so they don't have to commit a full day and just get exhausted from just constantly thinking and planning. So you may find that the best solution for you is to do 2 half days. Even better, I think, would be 2 full days at their location. Barring going to your client location, do it online. Use some sort of online meeting software. I use Zoom. You could use GoToMeeting or any of the others that exist out there and be able to work with the stakeholders. You're not going to develop that rapport and the bonding necessary to have a close working relationship, but it will be far better than you just going and disappearing and typing up a report and handing them a report. You really need to have this live interaction. Without that live interaction, you're not really going to get a true feeling of the vision. You're not going to get what they believe about their diagnosis. You're just going to get the raw data. You're just going to get enough information that you start making assumptions about what's going on and not being able to clarify by asking them in real time what they're thinking. Because if you email back and forth or get on a call and then later respond by email and all that jumping around that's not done in a live format, in a structured live format, what's going to happen is you will make a lot of assumptions and your planning will be way off. It will not truly be tied to what the company really wishes to achieve. After the live section of strategy, you go into your market research. You go dive into the things that doesn't require the client to be around, analyzing their analytics, seeing what kind of traffic they get to their site, seeing how well their ads have done in the past, those sort of things. All the things that don't require you to get insights from your client, this stuff you do by yourself. And then you come back to another live session after you've built the entire plan, which in other words is a proposal. You don't want to just ship it to them. You want to go through it live with all the stakeholders, or as you may call them, decision makers. You bring all those people into another live online session, or maybe do it in person if they're local, or if it's a big client, fly out there and do it in person. So that way there's that back and forth. That's what we're actually after. The more back and forth we get during this stage, the more back and forth that we can get between our client and our team, the better understanding we're going to have and the better service we can provide them after the strategy phase is over. Now, for all those people who have never sold strategy before, how do you charge for it? Well, I want you to just charge a small fee. Don't charge a lot. Not because of the client's benefit, but because of your benefit. You're probably not going to be very confident in selling strategy the first few times you do it. So just make it a small fee. I would suggest about 10% or 15% of your normal fees. So if you charge a client, say $30,000, well then charge them $3,000 to $4,500 to do strategy and then charge them the $30,000. The reason we want to charge is to make sure that the client sees this as valuable and also for you to see it as valuable. If you don't see strategy as being valuable and that you personally get rewarded for it, get that dopamine rush from selling it, if you don't see that happening, then you're not going to want to do it. You'll go back to the old way of trying to run an agency and stay a commodity. If you just start off small fee, then just raise that fee over and over and over again until you finally tap your market's price elasticity. Okay, I have shared with you what goes into bundling strategy so that you can sell it to your next prospects. And let's be strategic with a like and a subscribe and a share and all the socials. And I'll see you in the next video.